Hey, folks, welcome to another episode of Draft Talk on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I'm Alan Saunders. That's Nick Farabaugh. We're at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, and we have been here all week. This will be our third episode from here. We have talked about a little bit about the Steelers' plans with Omar Khan. We talked a little bit about some of the news that happened earlier this week here. Let's really, though, today dive into these draft prospects that we've seen here, that we've talked to here, and maybe see if we can get our head around what we think the Steelers are going to do, but I think that may be difficult. Nick, let's start with the defensive linemen. They went up first, and I think it's a very interesting group of defensive linemen. I mean, that some of them have certainly done themselves some favors with testing. Pitts Kalajdzic with one of the fastest big man 40 times ever. But what's your sense of the defensive line group and where you think the Steelers may land if that's the direction they go?
The Steel line group isn't very good. I just don't like a lot of them. I have too many questions.
I think some of them are good, but there just aren't very many of them that are good. I think that's
Yeah.
there aren't many of them, period, to be perfectly honest. It's just a very small class.
Well, let me start off with positive. I'll tell you a guy who keeps checking boxes. Keanu Benton. He just does. Size. His testing was really good. He had really good three cone and short shuttle times, which was really good. The Steelers love themselves some agile D linemen. That's one thing that they really do. Like, and he comes from Wisconsin. He fits perfectly into their scheme. I mean, I think that's a real. It's one of those obvious picks. I think that if they 49, I think might be a realistic possibility for him. After what he did, I really like him. Bad man, Siaki Ika really tested awfully. That was very disappointing. I thought this man had some juice on tape that I thought I saw in the drills too. I thought he was moving a little bit better in those drills, but he did not test well. In fact, he tested awful. Gervon Dexter tested pretty well. He's raw, but he's interesting to me. Kalajdzic had a pit absurd testing, right? He was awesome in terms
But
of his
also,
testing.
measured as we suspected, pretty small.
Yeah, but I mean, he actually measured better than he thought he would, but 6'1", 281. But his arms are only 30 and
Arm
5/8
length
inches.
was the issue there.
Yeah, the arms were the huge issue. I was concerned about him potentially coming in at even shorter too. I was glad that he came in at around
Yeah, I thought 6'1" was big
6'1".
for him.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good for him that he got 6'1". But it's I'll tell you, Ade Adibawore, out of Northwestern, real good numbers for him. I really kind of like him. He's got some interesting tape too. Brzee tested pretty well. It's not a great class. There's a few guys here that I can go to bat for. I just think that the Steelers have to take one, and I think that they need to take one early. And right now, I think that there's a limited candidate pool for that, and there's only a few guys that are checking all those boxes.
Yeah, I mean, and I think Cansey, although he tested really well, I don't think it's a particularly good fit for what the Steelers need. I mean, a lot of what he brings to the table is duplicated by DeMarvin Leal, who they drafted last year. Obviously, Cansey is a better player, but I mean, when you look at the way they would fit into the Steelers scheme, very similar when compared differently to like a Keanu Benton or a Brian Brzee or someone like that, who is more of an interior player, more of a certainly in Benton's case, more of a run stuffing player than a penetrator. We can go over linebacker real quick. I mean, I know we know the Steelers need them, but this class has not been looking particularly good in that area. Did anyone change our minds from what you've seen so far?
Change your mind? No. Put them on your radar. Yes. Owen Papo out of Auburn. Really, a
The
guy we haven't talked about.
big
4'3".
profile on the site on him this morning.
Yeah.
Almost set the combine record in the 40 for a linebacker.
Oh, he's nutty on tape too. You turn on some of the tape and he's flies. He's a fun player. I don't know where he's going to go. I think he might be at 80-ish. I'll tell you
Fourth
at
round,
linebacker.
maybe.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, at linebacker, a very pleasant surprise. Jack Campbell, he tested
Yeah.
very well. I didn't see that level of athlete on tape, but he tested very well. And so, the tape was. Oh, I thought the tape at times had some very nice highs. it's had some low lows too. But if he has that athleticism, you can work with that. And you can have some upside to that. I also think that the class as a whole brought up some questions in it because there were a lot of guys that just didn't test. Ivan Pace at 5'10", tough to sell. I love Ivan Pace's mentality. I'm just not sure if he has the physical traits to stick long term. Dorian Williams, that's a guy that I thought really tested well out of Tulane, ran a 4.49, really good time. Dan Henley had a really good time for him. These guys tested pretty well. Trenton Simpson 4.43 needed that time, really good time for him. Are they going to change my evaluations? No. I think Trenton Simpson's pretty clearly the top linebacker in the class still. But
is he first round pick? Like I came into this not thinking he's a first round pick, and I don't think I changed my mind.
Trenton Simpson?
Yeah.
I think he's a first round pick. Maybe purely because there's no one else.
Yeah, it is always very difficult to judge like a position group where we're acknowledging that it's not as good of a position group that it normally is. So then where does the best guy go? Does he go where he might if he was the third or fourth best player like in a normal class, or does he get elevated because of the scarcity of the position? That's obviously, if he goes in the first round, I think it might be the Steelers taking him. There are not a lot of other linebacker needy teams in the back half of the first round. The Eagles, maybe if they make a trade.
Yeah, I mean, well, Drew Sanders didn't run, and he might be the top linebacker in the class too. So I look at that, and that's a question to me. I mean, I don't know. It's not a great class. There's some guys that I like in the mid rounds. I like Dan Henley. I think he's intriguing. I like Dorian Williams. I think Jack Campbell's an intriguing guy, but his stock also is inflated, right? Like for the Steelers, Drew Sanders in a typical draft would have been perfect with one of their second round picks. But he's not going to be there. He's going to go in the first round.
He'll be there. I think he'll be there at 32. I don't know about the second one.
I don't know if he will. He might be the first linebacker off the board. And
even if he isn't the first linebacker off the board, I think he'll be there at 32. I don't think there's a first round linebacker.
I mean, it's possible, but I don't know. It's an interesting class. I'm very encouraged by the Jack Campbell testing. I think that was the biggest storyline out of this group. It needed a third guy to kind of rise into the next tier. I think Campbell's probably the third guy with the other two that we just mentioned, Sanders and Simpson at this point.
Yeah, a guy I thought I was a little disappointed in. I was really looking forward to DeMarvion Overshown just because he's his background was as a defensive back, and I thought that maybe this would be one of the guys that would be one of the faster players in this group, and that didn't really come to pass. He was actually fairly slow, 4.56. So like not what I was thinking that he might be. And I think his stock probably fell down a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think a lot of guys in this linebacking room at the combine had times that didn't necessarily hit the marks. Overshown, I mean, 4.56 for a linebacker is a good time in general, but Overshown was kind of selling himself as an athletic freak.
Right. I mean, it depends on what kind of linebacker you are. Like a guy like Noah Sewell, who's just going to run downhill straight into people. Like it doesn't necessarily mean as much for him compared to Overshown, who's kind of highlighting his coverage ability. Then 4.56 is not really anything special.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. And so the linebacking group is just kind of mid. I mean, that's kind of what this is. I don't know. I feel like that's a position the Steelers will add to, but I'm not sure when.
From Tulane is another guy that we liked.
Yeah,
I thought had a pretty good testing day as well.
I really liked him. Out of the interviews, I thought Dan Henley just was super bright. He's a former wide receiver. He's a really fun player. The Steelers need coverage ability in that room. Like, I feel like they could get away with bringing Spillane back and drafting Dan Henley and just using him with Jack. I think they could do that, and it would work out actually pretty well.
I think they could do that with a number of these guys, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they could, right? And then Mark Robinson's kind of the wild card. But like, I don't know what they're gonna do. If inside linebacker, they're gonna draft one at some point. I think they're also gonna sign one, maybe even two. So we're kind of see. They just need. This is one of those positions when we highlighted, right? They just need bodies. I mean, they just need guys. They just don't have enough raw guys right now to build a room. It's two guys. It's Miles Jack and it's Mark Robinson. That's all.
Yeah. Let's move to the corners. Now, we talked to this group yesterday. I think it's one of the deepest cornerback classes we've had in a very long time. There is not a guy that I think is like a surefire top 10 pick, like a Sauce Gardner last year. But there are just so many really good corners. Now, these guys are starting to run right now as we speak, so we don't have 40 times for them yet. But just in talking to them and what you've kind of heard around, what are your thoughts on this corner class and how have things changed for you this week? I mean, to me, the number one storyline for the Steelers is, and it looks like they're really into Joey Porter Jr.
Oh man, I mean, I was at that press conference. I stayed from start to finish with Joey Porter Jr. and it felt like he kind of had a feeling about him that it's very likely he could be the pick at 17. And it makes
So,
sense, right?
JPJ is not going to run the 40. Just announced recently.
Yeah.
He had a 35 vert and a 10-9 broad. That's a very good broad jump. It's a pretty average vert for a corner.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. I'm not really drafting Joey Porter Jr. for his athleticism.
I think he just needs to not look awful, right?
Yeah.
Like, it
And he
can't
did
be
that.
it can't be a negative outlier.
Yeah. He said yesterday he wasn't going to run, so that's not too surprising. Okay. I think he'll run at the pro day. So that's kind of where he's saving that for.
We'll be there watching it from 100 yards away, barely able to see it.
Yeah, we'll be there, but
that's the setup at the Penn State pro day. But
yeah.
It was funny. So his measurements came in today, and I tweeted them out, and I just put them with his father's combine measurements just for, I don't know, a little fun, but exactly the same height. Joey Porter Jr. has longer arms. Now he's 48 pounds lighter. But I think that to me is the frame is the real selling point from like a physical standpoint. If you're just looking at the tangible stuff, like tall with long arms goes a real long way when you're talking about man coverage, when you're talking about stopping the run. And these are things that the Steelers care about for their corners. I mean, they've been playing more man. They still play a lot of zone, but I think he just has that look and feel of a physical Steelers corner. When Grady Brown was with us down in Mobile and was talking about what he looks for in a corner, first thing he said was, I need a well-rounded defender that wants to tackle. And I mean, that's definitely Joey Porter Jr.
Oh, for sure. He loves to get dirty. And, in talking with him, he's a different. I just want to kind of give you an idea of the intangible aspect of Joey Porter Jr. You know how Peasy was, right? Joey Porter. Joey Porter.
So just take the total opposite of that. Yeah, basically.
So Joey Porter was outspoken, wild, untamable, never smiled, and Joey Porter Jr. Yeah, right. Right. So, and the Joey Porter Jr. is laid back. He smiled more than his dad has ever smiled ever in a day in his life in one 15-minute interview setting. I kid you not. I turned to Jim Wexell and I said, he's not his father, all right. And Jim then turned around, told Joey Porter Jr., you smile a hell of a lot more than your dad does. To which Joey Porter Jr. said he's like his mom, and that's where he gets his stuff from. But he's a quiet leader. He's a leader still. Like, don't take that to say he's not a leader. He's just a quiet kind of physical leader, show by example guy. Kind of just understands it. 34-inch arms here too. That's a good measurement for him. He feels just really like a Steeler, man. He is. You don't always have guys that are legacies of a team feel like that team's, right? Like, I never thought Asante Samuel Jr., for example, felt like a Patriot. Like, that never was something to me. it does feel like something to me. Joey Porter Jr. just feels like a good fit. He feels like great value at 17-2. And I think it's pretty likely he's going to be there. Just because we'll talk about the rest of this corner class. Gonzalez and Witherspoon are really athletic and probably fit more of what teams like. Not everyone's going to be enthralled by the type of the kind of the archetype that Joey Porter Jr. is, because he's got a little work to do and technique wise, but the Steelers are going to be one of the teams that's going to love him.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a player that the Steelers are going to have a higher grade on than others. Those are the first-round corners. Let's talk about him. Devin Witherspoon didn't get to talk to him. He was very delayed to the podium for medical testing. Christian Gonzalez, also probably a first-round corner. Are there other guys that you've seen work their way into that conversation? And how do you break down those three?
Yeah, Gonzalez is awesome, man. Blue chipper athlete in terms of his pedigree. Now, this is a guy that, his sister's an Olympian. His brother-in-law is David Blau, if you didn't know. So he's a quarterback for the Lions. So he has bloodline connections all there. The Steelers are going to like that from him, first of all, just that he has that athletic kind of pedigree to him.
41.5 vert, 11.1 broad for Christian Gonzalez.
He's a freak.
That's pretty much top tier.
Yeah, I mean, he's a freak on the field. He might be the best pure athlete in this class. His 40 might be if there's a guy that can run sub 4.3 at this corner group, he is that. He is a nutty athlete, and his technique on tape ain't that bad either. I think he's going to be the first corner off the board. He could be a superstar. If there is no sauce of this group, but he could end up being that. He is a very, very special athlete. And then you look at Witherspoon. Witherspoon's very similar to Porter Jr. mentality-wise, in the fact that he is some of the hardest hits I've seen in college football this year by a defensive player. Super, super instinctual, good ball skills. He's a really good player too. I think he's my favorite cornerback in the class. He just does everything really well. He's versatile, so you don't put him into a box. You can really allow him to kind of just bloom. And I think he's a plug-and-play guy. So those are kind of the top three, but there's other guys in this group too that I really like. Emmanuel Forbes, I think, is a fun player. Ball hawk to the max. He is
just a playmaker, man. Like,
put
him next to Minka, and I don't want to throw the ball that's the whole side of the field if I'm a quarterback.
Yeah, right. My favorite of the second group is Julius Brents. I have been on him since Mobile.
He's another guy that, man, is he having a good week here. Julius Brents, 41.5 vert, 11.6 broad. His measurement numbers off the charts.
6'3".
He's a guy that when we got to Mobile, I don't think he was even a day 2 pick. Now he might be creeping up into the middle of the second round.
Yeah, I mean, that's the type of guy he is. And the tape's good, man. Like, he was just a guy that needed Mobile to show what he could do. He was awesome in Mobile. He's great here. His tape's pretty good. He's versatile too, though. He's a press corner that can play zone coverage and off man. That's rare. He's a good player. And his athleticism is also really good. The question is going to be, what can he run? That 40 times is going to be big for him. Because if he's slow, it just evaporates everything I just said.
And he's a big dude. Over 6'2", 198. Like, if you could put some decent speed with that athleticism and that size, man, I think I don't understand why he has not gotten more hype to this point, and I think maybe you're going to start to see that coming along. Another guy testing really, really well, Deontay Banks from Maryland. We got to talk about the Terps because, of course, Mike Tomlin's son Dino was at Maryland while all these guys were there. Deontay talked about having that relationship with Mike Tomlin. He's gone to that well a couple times over the last few years. Not a ton of success, but they've definitely done it. And he seems like his athletic testing has really been impressive as well.
Yeah, and he is a really good athlete too. Fluid. All these guys are really fluid.
42 vert for Deontay Banks. I mean, that's off the chart almost.
I mean, these corners are from another planet. This corner class is absurd. It is, in my opinion, the best pure position group of the class. It is so good.
And we haven't even gotten into like all these guys that I think are like still day two into the early part of day three, guys like Travius Hodges Tomlinson, Riley Moss, Tyreek Stevenson. There are a ton of these guys that are it's so deep.
We didn't even mention Clark Phillips. Like there's
Right, yeah.
Jalen Jones. I mean, there are so many
Cam
good
Smith.
players.
It is really
Yeah.
a really deep cornerback class. Steelers can probably get two if they want them.
Yeah, I mean Darius Rush out of South Carolina is a good player. There are so many corners that you can sink your teeth into and like in this class. And that's kind of rare. I feel like the league right now kind of is in a weird place where it doesn't necessarily have a lot of corner talent or enough corner talent.
Keely
This,
Ringo is a guy we didn't mention
yeah,
either. And Garrett Williams from Syracuse also
Ringo,
probably in that second group there.
yeah, so far Ringo is kind of the one guy that's sticking out as like a disappointment. He only jumped 33 and a half. He's a track star, so you kind of expected him to do a little better. I don't know. Keely Ringo's interesting to me. He could be one of those Steelers picks that ends up falling to the second round and they snatch up because everyone overthinks him. He's a good player. He's not a great player, but he's a good player. People are overthinking Keely Ringo. So I just look at this group, man. Fun group. The Steelers, whether they sign Cam Sutton or not, I think they're going to. But I anticipate they'll draft one, maybe two, as you said. This is if you need to build a corner room. I'm just saying, the Steelers have historically have been really bad at drafting corners. It is so hard to miss on corner in this class. There's just I don't even like dislike any of the hyped up guys. Like I can't even say there's an overhyped guy in this group.
No, and there's also a bunch of very versatile guys like Brian Branch is another player we didn't talk about. Is he a straight corner? I don't know. Maybe he could be a safety, but he can be a lot of things, and he's pretty good at most of them. It's really just a very, very deep class.
Yeah, and if they want a Brian Branch, I mean, look at the versatility that they have at that point. I mean, they could go so many,
especially if they bring Sutton back because he's already so versatile.
Yeah, and along with Minka, and if you get Terrell Edmonds back or KZ back, I don't care who you have. I mean, that is a group that could really mess with a quarterback's head because the range in that group, just athletically too, is insane. And he's a playmaker. Like they just need playmakers, and it's a lot of these guys are playmakers. And so I came out of yesterday, and I still think it today, thinking the most likely pick at 17 was a corner.
Yeah, I mean, I still think they will see what's there as far as the offensive line, and we haven't even gotten to talk to those guys yet. They are filtering into town today, and we'll talk to them tomorrow. But I think they'll look at offensive line and see what's there. I think they'll look at defensive line and see what's there. But I just think corner is the position where the draft lines up with their needs the best. I think there will be multiple, like Joey Porter Jr. is to me the player that is most likely to be available at 17 that I think the Steelers would definitely take if he's there.
Absolutely.
There are other players that I think they would definitely take if they're there, but that are less likely than not to be available at 17. I think Joey Porter 17 sounds about right for him. And I think that makes corner very likely. I think Gonzalez will go ahead of that. It would not surprise me if Witherspoon goes ahead of that, although he's not running. And so we'll have to wait until his pro day to really get a full gauge on where he is athletically. But I think corner makes a lot of sense for the Steelers, and it would not surprise me at all if that's the pick in the first round. It also wouldn't surprise me if they wait and go to the second round, just because there's so many of these guys that we talked about that, if let's just say that Joey Porter's not there, that those top three go before the Steelers pick at 17, they can go in another direction. They can get one or still two really good corners starting at pick 33 and moving down, just because there are so many good ones.
Yeah, I mean, that could be something, right, where that's the trade down scenario. We've often talked about trade down for like Torrance or someone like O-line wise, but trade down and take a corner later in the first round. Who's to say that Julius Prence's rise doesn't continue into the late back half of the first or something like that. There's going to be more than 3 first-round corners. I mean, there's going to be 2 or 3 that I think sneak in. I think there might be 5 or 6. I would not surprise me if Emmanuel Forbes goes there. Keely Ringo's probably going to be there. Brian Branch. So that's 6 right there. So I don't know. I think it's a crazy class that you just have so many options with. And Christian Gonzalez too. I didn't even mention this. Like that might be the dream pick in terms of just pure fit. I think, they don't go out west to see guys. It wouldn't surprise me if they go out to Oregon to see Christian Gonzalez. He's that good of a fit for them. I think the last time they went out west was DeCastro, and they ended up drafting.
Yeah, seems to work. Last thing I want to talk about is the wide receivers. Now they are not doing their testing until tomorrow, but we were able to talk to them today. And Jordan Addison was sort of the big story of the day. Obviously, the former Pitt receiver, played with Kenny Pickett, had a very controversial exit from Pitt. Had an okay season at USC. It wasn't nearly as good as Biletnikoff winning season with the Panthers in 2021. What did you take from Jordan Addison's comments? And it sure seems like he wouldn't mind at all coming back to Pittsburgh.
I'll tell you what, the Steelers could very well draft Jordan Addison at 17. I've said this to you many times. It doesn't shock me. I didn't really get that vibe from Omar Khan, but there's a willingness from the quarterback to push for this. Clearly, Kenny Pickett wants it. Jordan Addison wants it. I mean, there is public pressure, I think, to do it too. The pick is, I have conflicted feelings about the pick. Here's why. Addison's a good player, first of all, and he's worthy of the 17th overall pick. It's just not their biggest need. And I'm not sure if Addison is so good that he's the game changer that can justify that. It depends on what the board is. If the top 3 corners are gone and the top 3 tackles are gone, I think Addison's in a pretty good option, actually. Like, who are you taking that's better? Like, I'd rather have Addison than Simpson or Sanders at that spot. I'd rather have Addison than Wright or someone like that reaching for
How about
a tackle.
Torrance and Schmidt?
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather have Addison. I'd rather have Addison than probably any other corner, maybe other than Brian Branch. I would probably take Branch there. But I would rather have Addison than just about anybody else outside of that, those top 6.
Maybe Brian Brzee.
And I do think I'd rather have Addison.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge Brzee guy.
Me neither.
I would rather have Addison
And
than
I would honestly put Luke Van Ness in like a very similar category. I really like the player, but it's not like what he provides is not absolutely their biggest need.
Yeah, it's a weird dichotomy, but like it's not that crazy to see the board falling to, all right, Jones, Skoronski, and Johnson are all gone. Porter Jr., Gonzalez, and Witherspoon are all gone. Maybe Quentin Johnston goes first. Maybe a team likes Jalen Hyatt's speed. And then, well, there he is. And he's probably the best player available. And it just makes sense to take him if you're going to stay at 17. Now, maybe you trade back in that scenario. But I don't know. If they like him enough, it's not like I don't have to jump through hoops to convince myself of a realistic scenario where Jordan Addison makes sense at 17. I just spelled it out for you. And that's a very actually likely scenario.
Yeah, I think those are the top 3 corners and top 3 tackles are off the board. I think that's when you can start to look at Addison. I think that's when you can start to look at Van Ness, and other positions. And I think the reason you can do that is that corner is so deep. That they will get one. And I think tackle is very deep as well. I think we talked about that at the Senior Bowl. Like, I like the second group of tackles. Like Darnell Wright, I don't really love as a first-round pick, but I like him in the second. I like DeJuan Jones. I like Matthew Bergeron. Like, I think there are more players down that list that can play as well.
Yeah, like I like Anton Harrison in the second. I like a lot of these guys in the second. Like, And at 32, they're going to have a choice of one of them. It's clear. They're going to be able to either get a top corner or they're going to be able to get a top tackle. It's going to happen.
So I think those are the scenarios where you see wide receiver come into play. And if wide receiver does come into play, I really think the Steelers would love to have Jordan Addison. My personal opinion is that he is going to go before 17. I think he's probably the second best wide receiver in the class. And I just think not a lot of people have it mocked this way, but I think the wide receivers are going to go earlier than people think, just because it's a wide receiver crazy league right now, and not enough teams have them. And Jordan Addison's a heck of a player. He's not necessarily, a like surefire top 5 pick type guy, but man, he's really good, and he's going to be really good for someone.
He is. He's a really good player. And again, in the scenario I laid out, I just think the Steelers would be fools to not consider Jordan Addison. I mean, there is something to say about the innate feel of giving Pickett his college teammates if the value is right. It would be easy to help Kenny Pickett take a second-year leap with that. It would be easier for Matt Canada to draw up big plays because Addison can win at all 3 levels. It would just be easier to move guys around because what Addison is a versatile guy. So you don't have to lock Deontay Johnson into a slot. You don't have to lock George Pickens into one spot. So you can move him around. And he just fits what they want very well. He doesn't have to be a full-time slot. He can be whatever you want him to be. And so, yeah, I mean, the comments today were very much, he clearly wants it to happen. Like, there is no doubt to me Jordan Addison wants to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. I at these events, there's a lot of nothing comments where, guys, I would love to go there. This didn't feel like a nothing comment to me. This felt like actually, I want to go there. Like, I want to play with Kenny Pickett. And I think he'd be a fool not to. Like, why wouldn't you want to play with the guy that made you the Biletnikoff Award winner?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we've got more combine to come. We've got the 40 times for the cornerbacks coming out today. We've got the 40 times for the wide receivers coming out tomorrow. And we will talk to the offensive linemen tomorrow as well. So stay tuned here at Draft Talk on Pittsburgh Sports Live. We will have one more episode full of stuff from the combine. I'm not sure if we're going to record it here. We're going to wait till we get back to Pittsburgh. We'll figure that out. But definitely like and subscribe to the Pittsburgh Sports Live YouTube page. Check out all the coverage at SteelersNow.com. There's been a ton of it, and is going to keep coming as we talk to all these players and tell their stories from the combine. Anything else we want to wrap it up, Nick?
I think that's all. I did find it interesting. Jackson Smith-Njigba also kind of really wanted to come to Pittsburgh. Obviously, his brother plays for the
Pirates. The Steelers love themselves some Ohio State grads. I can totally see it. And also another player that I think would really fit what they need in the wide receiver room. Could be a second-round pick, maybe late first. He's, to me, a top 4 wide receiver in this class, and I think pretty easily. So maybe it depends on where the other guys go. But, yeah, he's an option there, too, for sure.
Yeah, he is. Silky smooth slot receiver. I mean,
we'll be helping out our buddies at Pittsburgh Baseball now with some content. If we got to draft the brother of the Pirates outfielder, Kanan Smith-Njigba. So get some good synergy going on there, and of course check out all their stuff. Bucks in spring training and John Parado and the gang. All kinds of coverage there. That's it for today. Thanks for watching Draft Talk on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I'm Alan. That's Nick. Until next time, enjoy.